Light Yagami is the main character of the hit anime Death Note. In it, Light Yagami obtains a magical book called the Death Note that allows him to write any person's name into it and they will pass on. The government ends up trying to track down who has this book, and Light is able to outsmart people way older and wiser than him in some pretty amazing ways. I can't really explain the 4D chess he does without this video breaking the hour mark, so this is your sign to watch it, or don't, and just keep watching the video. First things first is that this is the original Total Drama Island because I fully believe Light Yagami wins with almost zero difficulty in the reboot, as contestants get tricked in that by far simpler strategies than anything Light Yagami is capable of. Secondly, he will not have the Death Note on him, as this is about his wit and not about how fast he can write everyone's name down. Thirdly, both teams will be explored in separate episodes and it will go by fairly quickly, as I'll assume you've already watched Total Drama Island so you know the basic plot points and challenges. Now, who will Light replace? I think it's only fair that Light replaces the first boots of each team, so Ezekiel for the Killer Bass scenario and Noah for the Screaming Gophers scenario. Sorry you don't get to see Noah try to big brain Light on Screaming Gophers, but he wouldn't really care regardless, as this isn't World Tour Noah. The first scenario that will be explored is Killer Bass. Part 2 will be Screaming Gophers, so if you enjoy this video and want to see a part 2, subscribe, like, whatever, leave your thoughts in the comments. Make sure that you let your thoughts be known. Light would show up instead of Ezekiel, and he would just take a similar approach to Courtney, just being nice to everyone and trying not to make anyone too angry. He'd immediately begin scouting the competition, trying to think of who are the threats and who aren't, and thus would be useful to keep around for longer. As Light is put on the Killer Bass team, he would probably immediately realize how bad of a team this is, but not comment on it in public, choosing instead to air in the confessional instead. For the first challenge, I doubt Light would jump. Though he is an athletic high schooler, I don't think he'd take the chance here since he isn't made of cartoon physics and would just act as another chicken for the Killer Bass. However, instead of getting defensive over it like Courtney, he just apologized, though his ego would be incredibly bruised doing something like that. I don't think Light could really bring the Killer Bass back, and he'd probably just let the dysfunction occur rather than trying to fix it, as his initial strategy is just to blend in the background until he gathers all the info that he needs. Duncan would try and bring up the idea of eliminating DJ, Courtney, or Light, and Courtney would just dig herself into a deeper hole, as Light would stay calm, cool, and collected against the clearly agitated and out of her depth Courtney. Keep in mind, in canon, Courtney would have been voted out if Ezekiel did not speak up, so in this case, all Light has to do is not say anything sexist. So despite being in the bottom 2, Light would squeak out safely in the first elimination. I do think someone like Harold would be intrigued by Light, but I don't think he'd know exactly why, and would just assume he wants to be friends with him rather than knowing that Light is smarter than everyone else around here. Episode 3, and Light actually has a huge chance to make a difference. Light is a lot more astute than everyone else in this show, and would immediately know Heather stole Eva's MP3 and would call it out. The reason he does this is to get good rapport with everyone else on the team, and also get rid of a potential threat who's as conniving as he is. Sadly, I don't think Light pointing this out will really affect the result, as I feel like Light could go for a maximum of 48 hours without sleep, and Killer Bass will still lose in the end. Now, the consensus for who will leave is either Harold for being weird or Duncan for being scary. Now, I think Light would want Duncan gone way more since he's a threat, and he could easily rope Harold, Tyler, Katie, and Sadie to have at least a tied majority. And since Light pointed out Heather stole Eva's MP3 player, he could get Eva to vote Duncan, meaning he has a majority and Duncan leaves. Episode 4 could be an issue if they didn't have Eva, but Eva's here and she beat Sasquatch with no issue, so yeah, Screaming Gophers are done and Noah gets eliminated. Episode 5 is the talent contest, and I could see Light leading it and actually choosing Harold to compete, since if he screws things up, that's just better for him. He'd also let DJ and Jeff compete in this challenge. Jeff still breaks his skateboard, so Bridget would compete instead. None of this really matters, as Harold would still win it for the Bass in the end. Justin somehow still leaves, because if they didn't eliminate her originally, I doubt that would change here. Episode 6 would have major differences, as I doubt Light would just let 2 members of his team go missing, and would instead help gather blueberries with the rest of the team by their side, since that's food for the camping section of the challenge. As a result, Killer Bass would actually win this challenge, but Bridget would still burn down the tent in the middle of the night, and so Bridget is now someone Light wants to keep in way longer since she's useless. Screaming Gophers would likely vote off Izzy, and the RCMP would chase her off, since my conspiracy theory brain says this was a planned event from the start. Episode 7 would be interesting because we don't really know what Light is afraid of, but since he is such a controlling narcissist who needs to know everything that happens at any given time, I could see them locking him in a room so he couldn't know a single thing that happened during the day, and he wouldn't even know the score at the end. The more interesting question right now is who would be the one Gopher's offers the win to for Killer Bass, and I think he'd simply just offer it to Tyler and he'd still fail to do a sphere, so Killer Bass would lose, even with Light adding a point onto the board. This would be a major blow to Light, as now he doesn't know much of anything about what happened in the challenge. With no information to go on, he'd probably get rid of Eva, since she has outlived her usefulness and only gets stronger and more aggressive by the day. Episode 8, Killer Bass could win even without Izzy being there to give the idea for someone to push the canoe, since Light would most likely be able to come up with such a simple idea himself, and DJ would win the challenge for the Killer Bass like in canon. This vote is tough though, because originally it was Izzy and Lindsay in the bottom two, but this time I could easily see it being 4 votes against Heather and 4 votes against someone like Cody, since Heather thinks she could beat Cody with minimal effort in a tiebreaker, and despite a great showing for Cody this episode, I think he does get beat by Heather in the tiebreaker. Episode 9, and Light wouldn't even really have to try, since the Gophers are the ones to ruin their own chances of winning in this episode, since Beth defects this episode, and I think it would be between Beth and Heather would be the one leaving, since I really doubt she could get a 4th vote from Gwen, LaShawna, Trent, or Beth in this episode. Light would just be doing his usual stuff, trying to bond with everyone, but I feel like DJ would be the one who kind of realizes something is wrong with Light, like his vibes are completely fake. Episode 10 would have Jeff still leading the Killer Bass in the cooking competition, and without Heather being the head chef for Extreme Gophers, I think they have a much better chance of winning, since they aren't making what Heather wants. However, I do think that Killer Bass would pull out the win in the end, since you can't expect anything good from Lindsay making the dessert. As a result, I think Owen would get eliminated, but I think the question will pop up at the end what totem Beth had, and Beth would say that she got it from Boney Island, and everybody would kind of realize that's a big no-no. Light would actually offer to dispose of it for Beth, and Beth would take this deal with no complaints. Light just keeps it so that he can get rid of some people on his team, and then he'll properly dispose of it at Merge. Episode 11 has quite a few changes from canon, since I think DJ would still give Bunny to Jeff, but Jeff would trust Light to take care of Bunny over himself. So due to that, Bunny would not die, since I really don't think Light is that evil at this point that he would let Bunny die. In the tiebreaker round, DJ tries, and ironically, because of the totem in Light's possession, the Screaming Gophers hit the explosive and land first. This means the Screaming Gophers win like in canon, just a different reason for it. Now, Light would not want Harold gone, since Harold is weird and is Harold's only friend on the team, and the same story applies to Tyler. He wouldn't want Katie or Sadie gone, since they would do whatever he told them to. He wouldn't want Bridget gone since she's worthless, which always helps, but he would want Jeff gone since he and Bridget are getting closer and he doesn't want people chatting without him being there to listen. I mean, they could be talking about betraying him, meaning that Jeff gets voted off in a 5-3 vote where the other 3 vote Harold. Episode 12, and this team is not built for Chef's Boot Camp. I don't think any of the Bass besides Light could make the final stage. I could see Light failing during the final stage and Gwen would be the one to take it home for the Screaming Gophers like in canon. DJ would tell Harold that normally he wouldn't talk bad about people, but Light gives him a bad feeling, like he isn't being real with them. Harold would warn Light about DJ, and Light would be happy about it, but now be worried since he never thought DJ would try to overthrow him. With that being said, DJ would get voted out, but DJ would warn them not to be a sheep to Light. Episode 13, and Light would be tasked with skydiving, and unlike DJ, he'd intentionally push Trent out of the plane so he'd fall and lose the point, while Light would land successfully, scoring a point for the Bass. Next part would have Tyler riding the moose for the Bass, while LaShawna did it for Gophers, and Tyler would get flung like Jeff did, so Screaming Gophers win the point there. Finally, Katie would be tasked with driving the Sea-Doo for Bass, while Beth would be tasked with doing it for Gophers. Harold would ski for Bass, while Lindsay skis for Gophers. Since the curse is still prevalent, I think Harold would somehow lose, as well as Katie, so Gophers would win. Bridget would spend the episode trying to see who wrote the love letter, and would be convinced it was Light, and I think it would annoy Light enough to vote her off. Episode 14, and I think guys would win by the narrowest of margins. I just think the remaining guys would be willing to eat a lot more of the grilled stuff compared to the girls who have to have all of them eat it to get a point. Hell, I feel like Light would eat the dolphin hot dog on his own. Episode 15 is Merge, and Eva and Izzy come back. Light wouldn't last long in the challenge and would say uncle pretty quickly to any physical pain type challenge. LaShawna still wins, putting her on his radar, and Eva would get eliminated again. Episode 16 is interesting because nothing really matters besides Heather's key, and we don't exactly know who would go to if Heather wasn't here, so to give him maximum plot armor, we'll give it to Light since he's the main antagonist now. Now, I don't think it would be hard at all for Light to come up with a plan similar or better than Heather's original plan in canon, so Light gets immunity without pissing anyone off, unlike Heather, and Light easily has the numbers to eliminate LaShawna. Episode 17, and I think Light could come up with a solution to hide in the water similar to how Lashana did, since he'd know everyone else would be hiding on land, so Chef would go there first. Izzy would agree to not rat him out, and Light would realize she could be a great ally who'd do anything if it meant for a more entertaining game. Light would win immunity and the girls would try to formulate a girls alliance, but it would fall apart as Katie and Sadie wouldn't be willing to betray Light, and neither would any of the other girls, and thus he'd want Gwen gone since her and Trent are the last people who he has no rapport with at all, plus they're a couple. Episode 18 is the start of the rigged challenges, and Izzy would get Light to ride her bike, and Light would be pretty upset until the end where the person who leaves would be revealed. Now there are a couple of people I could see passing this challenge. Lindsay does in canon, so that doesn't need to change, and since she doesn't have to hold herself back for Heather, Lindsay would be first. Now it's between Harold and Beth for who would be last, and I think it's more fitting for this to be Beth's end. When Beth is packing, she'd find the Boney Island totem in her bag. She'd warn Harold that Light is a fake, and this would start Harold questioning if Light is really being honest with him, especially since DJ warned him before. Episode 19 is the horror movie challenge, and Light would lead the charge to try and keep everyone alive. Izzy would fight against Chef this time. Lindsay and Tyler would take Owen and Izzy's place, but Tyler wouldn't betray Lindsay. Trent and Harold would be picked off individually, with Harold trying his best to put up a fight. Katie and Sadie would be picked off together. Now you may be thinking, oh, without Gwen, they're all going to be killed by the real killer. Now's the time to mention that Light is able to send a grown man several feet backwards through the air with a single punch. Keep in mind that even UFC fighters can't do anything close to that. The same man he sent flying is a master martial artist, and he's able to take those kicks without even a scratch on him in the end, so honestly, if Light's able to keep up with that, the killer is more at risk than Light is, and Light can produce a punch or kick equivalent or better than Gwen's kick in canon. Even if you want to highball the killer, it wouldn't matter as Light would be able to outlast and most likely moves much faster than the killer, so Island of the Slaughtered will not occur in this timeline, and Light will score immunity for himself. Back to the elimination, either Katie or Sadie is going home, and unlike in canon, Sadie goes home first to give Katie some time to shine since the writers won't give her any. Episode 20, and I feel like with no immunity, Izzy and Light would talk strategy while Light would try to gauge how smart Izzy actually is. He'd realize pretty quickly that next to him, Izzy is the second smartest person here. It really doesn't matter who wins the challenge because it's just a reward, so pick your favorite one here besides Izzy and Light. At elimination, I think Light would enact step 1 of his new plan and get rid of Lindsay since Tyler and her are together. He can't risk them making it to the final 3 and working together despite how worthless they are challenge-wise. Now you may think you may get rid of Tyler because canonically he's really good with the women, but he knows Tyler way more and would know exactly how to play him, unlike Lindsay who he just learned about at Merge. Episode 21 is a team-based challenge with people they didn't really know, so I could see it being Katie and Harold, Tyler and Izzy, and finally Light and Trent. I don't see Light finding anything interesting about Trent, but he would consider a possible avenue where he takes him further since he knows how weak he is when it comes to anything gross, as shown in episode 14. Tyler and Izzy would win the eating part of the challenge, and I think there's a good chance that Light and Trent would stop during the second part so that Trent could plead his case to him, and this would allow Light and Trent to win the second part, and despite being so smart, I really can't see Light winning the third part of the challenge. Light views himself so highly that he probably wouldn't remember the people he betrayed to get this far, and Izzy would probably throw the challenge for fun, so Katie and Harold would win the third part, meaning everyone is up for elimination. Light would strike a deal with Trent where if he votes for Izzy, he will bring him to the final 3. Of course, this is just to get a free vote and make sure he won't get voted off by Trent, and Trent would gladly accept. Izzy would leave and wouldn't really be mad about it since she had fun. Episode 22 has the eliminated contestants voting. Now, if this was set up for a vote, Light probably would leave since Beth would have connected the dots by now and realized Light lied about disposing the totem. She would have told everyone at the Casa de Losers, but since Sadie is here, I feel like she'd blurt Katie's name out, setting off a chain reaction and getting Katie eliminated. Episode 23 is a non-elimination episode and my least favorite episode of the season, so I'm not covering it since in the grand scheme I can't see any huge revelations occurring besides Harold's worries about Light being confirmed due to how Light would treat the situation. Episode 24 is a team challenge, and the teams would be Harold and Trent versus Tyler and Light. Now, Light would know this is one of the few challenge Harold would excel in, so he'd manipulate Trent to give him their supplies so they could win and vote off Harold since he's a much bigger threat. Harold would try his best to try and fight this, saying he's just using him, but Trent, being Trent, would fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Unluckily, though, it's not the camper's choice for who leaves, and Chef would boot Trent over Harold, with Chef's reasoning being Trent giving the supplies over shows that he's a traitor and not a real soldier. Additionally, Harold made it further in Chef's Boot Camp. Episode 25, and it's the Triple Dog Dare Challenge. Tyler would be at a crossroads between his friendship with Harold and his friendship with Light. Now, there are quite a few challenges here I don't think Light would excel in, and a lot that Harold and Tyler wouldn't either. This would be a toss-up, but there's one mechanic in this game that makes this a much easier decision, and it's that there's the daring system where you can dare someone else to take the dare you're supposed to do. With this tiny amount of control, I think Light can weigh his options and choose the perfect candidate for each dare. And even though it's not his preferred target, he'd get Tyler out, since Tyler would be way more prone to mess something up over a version of Harold that is actively trying his best to win. When he's leaving, Light would tell Tyler that he was a great ally for him and thanks him for being the one to take the fall. He will give him $10,000 to compensate when he wins. Tyler wouldn't really know how to feel since Light betrayed him to get ahead. The finale is here, and let's go over whose side everyone is on. Noah, Justin, Heather, Duncan, Katie, Sadie, Izzy, and Trent are on Light's side, while for Harold we have Courtney, Cody, Owen, Jeff, Bridget, DJ, Eva, Gwen, Lashana, Beth, Lindsay, and finally Tyler. Light would comment on Tyler being on Harold's side, and he'd say that he thought he was smarter than that. He can consider the money he offered a lost opportunity. I'd love to think of some way Harold wins, but Light is just excelling in every category here. There's really not one section of the finale that Light doesn't either have the stamina for or the intelligence to figure out a way to make it much easier. As a result, Light wins in the Killer Bass route. It's no surprise really, as Killer Bass don't really have any opposition when it comes to strategists. Courtney is the toughest one, and Light can easily convince people to vote her over him in episode 2. Killer Bass are all about unity, while Screaming Gophers are about drama and having to pick sides. Light can easily take a role like Courtney and create a hierarchy and pick people off as he commands. But let me know what you think, and stay tuned for the Screaming Gophers version coming soon. If you liked this video, consider leaving a like and leaving a character you'd like to see compete in the future. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed and have the day you deserve.